So after 30, we start losing muscle, and our muscle is the biggest driver of our metabolism. So if we're not actively preserving our muscle when we're in a calorie deficit or actively building muscle, which means you have to be eating around maintenance or more, then we're losing our muscle. We're losing our metabolism. When you lose muscle, it means that you will gain weight on fewer calories later.
Welcome to Rooted and Rising, where we focus on becoming whole through the mind, body, and spirit. Today, I am with Stephanie, a registered dietitian and mindset coach. Thank you so much for being with me today, Stephanie.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. We're going to dive into your personal journey that led you to combine diet with mindset coaching.
So, first, I have a degree in nutrition and I'm very science based. So, I love science. And what happened was I was working in clinical spaces telling people all the science of what they needed to do and why. And I thought that that would elicit behavior change. And it did not. It kind of just overwhelmed people. So, what I realized through coaching now hundreds of ladies is that when we know what to do, sometimes we're not always doing what we know, and closing what we call the knowing and doing gap is where the psychological part comes in and the mindset. So I am a fitness mindset coach and I help people to make strong decisions in their health, become the CEO of their health journey, their weight loss journey, and also to beat self-sabotage and lose the weight for good. So that was one thing. Just telling people the science wasn't working. And then my other part of my journey is just I never called myself depressed, but I think I was depressed for many years and I didn't know how to get out of it. And so I kind of worked on my own mindset, what I believed I can have, and I got myself out of a deep hole. Short story. So then I realized, okay, this can help people and I love coaching on it. So I put my degree to work with nutrition and then coupled that with the mindset part.
So let's piggyback on this mindset coaching. So can you dive a little bit more into it without giving everything? Because I know, this is how you make your money.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's so much that I can say about mindset. So my slogan is I help female perfectionists beat self-sabotage and lose the weight for good. And what this means is a lot of my clients have struggled with weight loss and they've yo-yo dieted for many years. And it's also been very action focused, doing the program. You're either on or you're off. But we really shift inside of my program, the Fit Figure Formula, we really shift into your identity. Who are you? What do you believe that you can have? And so we work on your inner thoughts. If I'm constantly thinking that I'm not consistent, I'm not a very disciplined person, I start off strong, but then I don't usually finish strong. If those are your beliefs, then that's what's going to show up in your actions and your behavior. So I help my clients redefine who they are, have that identity shift, by working on who they think they are, how that influences their habits, and then working on it being a lifestyle and not just like dieting for a certain period of time.
Can you tell me about the day you decided to pull yourself out of that state?
So I would say that it was probably over a period of time where I realized that I was not living my life to its fullest potential. I just felt like I had so much more to give in my current job at the time. I hated my current job. I would go to work. I'd close myself up in my office. I was always looking for new jobs. Like I wasn't learning. I wasn't growing. I felt very stagnant. And then over time, through different experiences and I had a boyfriend at the time who was all into like law of attraction and all that. And he would always try to encourage me to think bigger and be an entrepreneur. And I was like, I don't want to do that. Leave me alone. I just want to go to work and come home. Like I didn't want to do all of that because the real truth was I didn't really believe that I could do it. I didn't think that I was articulate. I didn't think I had anything to say and I did not want to be seen. So when you're living beneath your own greatness, I feel like you start to get uncomfortable at a certain point. And the deep hole that I was in was making me more uncomfortable. And I just decided I want to wake up in the morning and love what I do. I want to be excited. I want to, be impactful and grow. And I knew that I couldn't do that in the job that I was at. So over time, it was just like a little seed that was planted, and over time I grew that. And honestly, the biggest way that I did that was, if I don't know if you remember the movie War Room. Remember there's a movie called War Room,
Yes.
and she would go into her closet and she would like pray, and I was like, "Oh, you know what? I think I'm going to do." I had just bought a house at the time. I was like 29 years old, and I was like, "Oh, I want to do that too." So I would go in my closet and I would literally journal and pray. And I listened to, at that time, a lot of Oprah Winfrey Super Soul Sunday, and I followed a lot of her guests as well. And so I can't say that it was one day, but it was over a period of time where I decided that I wanted to do something exciting with the time that I had every day. And this is what has grown out of it.
Escape to Hot Springs, Arkansas, and reconnect with yourself at our Feed Your Soul Wellness Retreat happening April 29th. Imagine yourself surrounded by healing waters, expert guidance, and a community dedicated to real wellness. This is your moment to root and rise. Just lock in your spot and save with our early bird registration. Opening November 1st through November 30th. Set your clocks as there are limited space available. Now, back to the episode.
You specifically focus on women over 40 who feels like what worked in their 20s doesn't work anymore. What are the biggest shifts happening in a woman's body and mind during this stage of life?
So I think that part of what you mentioned, what is happening in your body right now and what you used to do to like get the weight off, isn't the same thing that you're used to doing in your 20s and 30s. And a lot of clients are used to doing a lot of cardio. Or if they do pick up some weights, it's like 5-pound weights and they'll just do those weights. And so I call that like doing cardio with weights versus actually strength training. So after 30, we start losing muscle, and our muscle is the biggest driver of our metabolism. So if we are not actively preserving our muscle when we're in a calorie deficit, or actively building muscle, which means you have to be eating around maintenance or more, then we're losing our muscle. We're losing our metabolism. When you lose muscle, it means that you will gain weight on fewer calories later. So I think that that's one of the biggest things. It's like, oh, what I used to do isn't working anymore. It's likely because you don't have as much muscle mass. And then we start to get less active. So we're not moving. Even myself, like working for myself, I work way more than my 9 to 5. And so I'm sitting down a lot more versus like walking around hospital rooms. And just that, small change in physical activity can cause you to have body changes that you notice in the mirror and on the scale. I also think perimenopause, I'm definitely going through that right now. Brain fog, just noticing different changes in your mood. And, I was just talking to someone earlier about all these supplements. You're supposed to take creatine and magnesium. It's just a lot, right? So yes, there are several things that are happening, but the good thing is our hormones are changing, but what we do influences our hormones as well. And that's the thing that I try to get my clients to focus on, because how much you sleep, what you put in your body, how many steps you take a day, those are more so in your control, and those influence your hormones as well. So as much as our hormones are changing and influencing our body and mind, we also can do things that influence our hormones as well.
What are the first steps you take when meeting a new client to assess their needs and goals?
So typically, I will have an interest call with the client. So it's one on one. And I start with the first question of like, how was food approached as a kid? And when is the first time you noticed that you had an issue with either weight, body image, or labs? And so that usually takes people back to the beginning, and they tell me basically their story from, usually starting in childhood about, having to eat all the food on their plate, or, always being the bigger person. And that's not everyone's story, but a lot of my clients have like, yeah, I've always been like the bigger girl, and how that influenced their self-esteem or not. And so I go through and I listen deeply. I think that's part of being a coach, is being able to listen well. And then I get to go and take what you said and ask you more questions about some of the things that I'm hearing. And I literally go from there. It's literally a conversation. And after the conversation, I can hear how you tell your story, which is really important, because that's a choice, even though sometimes it doesn't feel like it. But if you're saying, I have always been the bigger person, I stop and start, I'm really not consistent, right? Those are all choices to think versus saying, every time I fall off, I get back on every time, right? Same situation, same circumstance, but how you chose to tell the story. Then I get to say, hey, did you notice how you told that story? Do you think there's another way that you could tell that story or think about yourself that might put you in an advantage? So even just an interest call when you join the Fit Figure formula is going to be very helpful. So, and you see, even when I just said that just now, I'm talking a lot about mindset, right? On the first call, I'm not asking a lot of, your preferences about your food and all that. I'm not even asking that, because I already know that information of like, eat more fruits and vegetables. People already know to do that. Like inside the formula, I am going to teach you a system of how to do that more often and bring in the most nutritious foods for your body. But I know that all of that stuff is already on the internet, and you've already heard and you've seen, how to go to Pinterest and get new recipes, right? That's not actually the actual problem. Mm-hmm. So that's why I dive into the mindset, because I think we know what foods are more healthy. We know not to go through the drive-thru. We know DoorDash probably is not going to be delivering anything healthy, but it's just our systems and our strategies and our mindset. So that's where I start with every client.
What is the most common mindset issue that you run into?
I would probably say just all or nothing thinking, which is why, again, I say I help female perfectionists, because female perfectionists are usually like, I'm either on track, I'm doing everything, I'm doing 10,000 steps a day, I'm going to the gym every day, I'm on program, and the first time I mess up, now I got to start over. All or nothing. So there's like no in between, feeling like they're failing. That's probably the biggest one. Another one is just being really self-critical. Self-trust is very important when you're trying to build a new identity and work on your weight loss. And if you don't trust yourself with your health habits, you probably won't execute them very often. But also self-compassion is very closely tied to that, because when you are making mistakes, or if maybe you do overeat, beating yourself up instead of lifting yourself up, number one, is a choice, but also beating yourself up doesn't help you to recover. And I think too, most of my clients are Black women, and we understand how to be hard on ourselves. Like, we get that. But it's like, self-compassion actually would help you to make better progress and not hurt your self-esteem, instead of being mean to yourself and being like, dang, why did I do that? Instead saying, why am I doing that? Right? And like getting curious. Instead of beating yourself, get curious. Why does this keep happening? And I promise you, you'll find so many more answers that you can actually workshop the problem and then make progress, instead of just saying, I just need to do better. That's just like such a dead end sentence. allow your brain to explore or workshop what's wrong. And then you keep doing that over and over again. And then that kind of dings your self esteem a little bit.
Can you explain what macros are and why tracking them can be more accessible and effective than calorie counting?
Yes. So macros are proteins, carbs, and fats. And these are the three ways that we get calories in our food. So when you are counting macros, you essentially are counting calories, but you're just, sorry, you essentially are counting calories, but you're actually saying, okay, I want a certain percent to come from protein, certain percent to come from fat, certain percent to come from carbs. And I break this down really simply in the Fit Figure formula because we mostly focus on the total calorie amount and how many grams of protein you're getting. And I let my clients fat and carbs flex, meaning that they don't have a goal to hit for those. And I think that creates a little bit more food freedom so that you don't have to hit all three of those numbers. So a lot of times when people are tracking their food in MyFitnessPal, they're trying to hit all three numbers. They have zero strategy for how to do that. And then they get to the end of the day, they're over on calories, under on protein. There's nothing you can do about it at that point, but start over. And if you don't have like a strategy, you're just spending all that time and you're still not hitting your numbers. So I teach my clients how to hit their protein goal, how to be within 100 calories of their calorie goal, let their carbs and their fats flex. And I don't give meal plans. My clients graduate from the Fit Figure formula, understanding how to put a full plan together. They're adding in treats whenever they want instead of waiting for a cheat day. And they have so much more confidence about what they're putting on their plate. And so I think that macros is the easiest way to understand your food and give you more confidence and freedom with your food instead of just dieting and cutting things out.
Well, it's so funny that you say that because I go to the Wellness Center on Fort Sam Houston. And I just had the energy test and I just got the 3 macros and they explained it just the way you did. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, she is hitting the mark or they're hitting the mark because I'm doing what she just said. And I really think it's working. I really think it's working because in 6 weeks, I went down 3% in fat.
Wow.
Yes.
That's great. Congratulations.
Yes. You talk about teaching women to fuel their goals without cutting out favorite foods. How do you help clients shift from a good and bad mentally to a more balanced relationship with eating and food?
So that first question that I mentioned before about how was food approached as a kid, we realize that we have what I call taught thoughts. Taught thoughts are just thoughts that were taught to us. And as a kid, our subconscious is wide open. We just accept whatever as normal. And so as an adult, we get to decide, okay, this is how I was taught to think about food, but is that what I want to think about it? So if we take off the labels, we take off what someone else taught you to believe about food, your body, etc., then we have like this big open space to be like, okay, well, what do I believe? What do I want to think about food and my body? And those thoughts are actually more authentic to yourself than your taught thoughts, even though sometimes when you try to adopt a new thought or a new way of thinking, it doesn't feel true. It's just because you haven't practiced it enough. And so even if it might not feel familiar, your chosen thoughts are more authentic to you than the automatic taught thoughts that might just pop up in your brain. So first thing is we just examine, what are my current thoughts? What are my current self-sabotaging thoughts? And do I want to keep those thoughts? And then we create new ones. And what would I rather think instead? So I think it starts with the awareness of where you're at right now mentally, and then deciding what you want to think. But I also think too, with the strategy that I teach them inside the formula, they can see that I can add in treats. I can still hit my goals. I'm seeing results. So they're seeing that too over time, that like, if I have a piece of cake, it doesn't ruin all of my progress. I don't have to have that all or nothing thinking. You can see that I'm still making progress even when I have balance. Balance is not perfection. Balance means, you have your healthy foods and then you have your treats, and it's both and instead of like excluding things. So I think that's really helpful.
So what you just said. So I've been a vegan for 7 years. And so before I was a vegan, I wouldn't eat mushroom, beets, stuff that didn't look appealing. I wouldn't eat it because I'm like, that's not healthy. But when I became a vegan, like you said, I didn't even know that's what I did. But what you said, I changed my mindset of thinking because I had to figure out what works for my body now that I'm not eating meat anymore. And so that is a great concept that you had. Never thought of it, but now I see, changing your mindset on things to help you and not harm you.
Yeah. And I think like experimenting too, because like maybe you don't like beets, but have you ever like roasted beets? Do you juice beets? Like there are different ways that you can have the same vegetable that you think that you don't like, cook it in a different way or put some different spices with it, and you actually do. So it's kind of like I have an 8-year-old who's very picky, and like treating it like you would with a picky child. It's like, okay, I'm going to try this. My guideline for my clients is one new recipe per week. No more than that, because we're not going to overwhelm yourself. One new recipe per week. And then if you like it, adopt it. And so you can have it again and again. And it rolls in some variety. But I definitely think being willing to go on an adventure and find new healthy things that you actually enjoy and remember those so that you can put those into your rotation.
Yes, yes. What is an example of a successful client outcome and what made the strategy effective?
So I have so many client wins. If you follow me on social media at Stephanie Riles on Facebook or Stephanie Riles Dietitian at Instagram, I post my client wins all the time. Let me think of one that really stands out. So I have had clients. I don't want to name any names, but I
Yes.
will say I have a client who at first was extremely skeptical about doing all this healthy stuff in quotations. It's just like, oh, I don't want to be a health nut. But she wanted this goal, right? She wanted to feel better. She wanted to lose weight, but she was just like, I don't want to do all of that, right? So my philosophy is let's lean all the way in. So when just cut out meal times, or if you just cut out carbs, you're still kind of guessing about your nutrition and what you actually are eating during your eating window. You still need to understand your food. So I lean in with my clients, and this client was very apprehensive, but the way that I start out with just mastering breakfast. So we're not doing everything. We're just starting off with breakfast. The following week, we add lunch. The following week, we add dinner. So it doesn't feel overwhelming like you're overhauling your diet. And at the end of 16 weeks, which my program currently is 16 weeks, she was pre-planning her meals. She's hitting her macros. She's going on her walks. She's strength training. She's loving how she's looking, and she's lost weight. And she was just like, at first she was like, oh, I don't want to do all this woo-woo like mindset stuff. And she was a total believer after the fact. And I think that sometimes we have either an againstness, like we think I'm going to have to change. I'm going to have to be this certain type of person, and I don't want to be that. Sometimes we're even scared of that person. Like, what am I going to have to give up? Am I going to have to give up my treats or hanging out with my friends, my date nights? I'm going to have to give up. So we actually start to micro sabotage and micro quit during the process because we haven't addressed like, what am I really scared of? And when you totally understand your food, now you can back off. Right now, you don't have to be so specific because you have the knowledge and you've practiced it over and over again. So now you can say, okay, I'm going to take the knowledge that I have when I was leaned in and I'm totally engaged and making sure that like I have exactly what I need to have on my plate. And now when you eat intuitively and you're guesstimating, you have a much better way to actually gauge instead of just guessing, because you have leaned in and now you really understand your food. So that's just one of the many, like my clients lose weight, they lower their A1C. And even one of my clients was lowered her A1C and she was eating a little bit more carbs. We were just eating the right carbs and she was just floored. And I was like, see, I told you. I said, I feel vindicated, because she was like, I don't think it's going to be lower. I was like, okay. And it was lower. So yeah, I have a ton of client wins.
Feeling stuck in your wellness journey? You're not alone. That's why I created the Embodiment Collection. This collection includes 8 digital products we've created to help you embody these traits and connect with your best self. You can buy one, mix and match, or purchase the deluxe, which includes all embodiment guides. Head to LamisaWellnessCollective.com/store or click the link below to shop now. Let your wellness transformation start today. Now, back to the episode.
What are the key mindset patterns that keep women trapped in the I'll start again Monday loop?
Again, going back to that self-compassion, thinking that you have to be perfect and thinking that consistency equals perfection. So consistency does not mean that you're doing everything right every single time, and that as soon as you mess up, you have to start on Monday, because it might be Thursday. You've still got the rest of Thursday, Friday, Saturday, something like. You're throwing away those days because you quote unquote messed up one day. And that all or nothing thinking is always going to keep you inconsistent. And inconsistency is always going to keep you yo-yo dieting. It's always going to keep you losing that same 15 pounds over and over again. So just going back to the all or nothing thinking, feeling like you have to be perfect or nothing, that's probably the biggest trap for a lot of my clients.
How do you help women who spent years taking care of everyone else start prioritizing themselves?
So this is such a beautiful journey that I get to help my clients on. So I'll give you a client example. This client is offboarding here pretty soon. So we worked together 16 weeks and then she ended up renewing for a few more additional months. And she had a really hard time accepting herself. So it's really hard to love something that you don't accept, right? So we started off there, like jumping into like, oh, I love myself didn't feel true for her. So we were like, okay, what are the things that I can accept? And we start looking for those things first, because we have what's called our reticular activating system in our brain. And it's kind of like a filter, and it only lets in what we already believe and what we're already kind of looking for. It's kind of like when I have a Lincoln MKX, a black Lincoln MKX, and I never saw that car or noticed it until I got one. And then when I got that car, it's like, oh my God, everybody has my car now. It's like, no, like people were driving that car before. You're just now like acutely aware of it. So it's the same thing. Like there are so many wins. There are so many things to love, to accept about yourself. But when you look in the mirror, you're only looking for the things you don't like. And a lot of my clients, they hate taking progress photos in the beginning. And when we compare their progress photos, sometimes we are looking at the exact same progress photos. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so excited. I'm like, okay, you're making progress. And they're like, yeah, I don't see it. And I have to literally zoom in and be like, do you not see that your waist is shrinking in here? And they're like, oh my God, I wasn't looking at that. The win is right there in front of their face, but they can't see it because they're not looking for the progress. They're actually not looking for the things that they like. They're looking for the things that they still don't like. So I help them transition from looking for the things that they don't like to looking for, how am I already like successful in this area? How am I already disciplined? How am I already consistent? What do I already love about myself? Like there are things already here. You're sitting on a treasure chest right here. And so then it's like, oh, okay, if I dust off, myself, and I'm thinking like, oh, all of these wins were already here. So what else could create by deciding to find the good and then also create the self-love, because that love comes from you. It's not going to just like come and sit on your lap. Same thing with discipline. Like discipline's not going to come and just sit on your lap. It comes from you. You create that. But you have to give yourself credit along the way. So another thing with perfectionists is that they don't count their wins. Somebody gives them a compliment and they're like, "Oh no, that's just something." It's, they just push it to the side. But it's like, no, every win you need to celebrate. Everything that you love about yourself, make sure that you're telling yourself in the mirror that you love yourself, because otherwise you're telling your brain that progress doesn't matter. And why would you create more progress if you're already discounting the progress that you've already made? So we kind of start there.
What misconception do your clients typically have about lifting weights?
So one of the biggest misconceptions about lifting weights is that it's going to make you bulky. And a lot of us, number one, aren't lifting heavy enough to get bulky. And then also, if you're getting bulky by lifting weights, it's not the weights, it's your calories. It's the calories. It's always the food. So when you lift weights, you actually get more compact, right? You actually get leaner. You actually, again, get more compact. You get smaller. So if you've ever seen those replicas of a pound of fat versus a pound of muscle, the pound of fat takes up way more space. It's way more bulky than a pound of muscle, right? So when you're adding lean tissue, you're actually getting more compact. But if you're still eating too many calories, then yeah, your body's going to store that extra energy as fat. Don't think that you can just exercise. That's why the nutrition part and the mindset part is so important, because sure, you can exercise and you can start lifting a little heavier, but if you're still eating too many calories, then it's not going to give you the effect that you want. So it's really about understanding how many calories you need, how much protein you need, and getting really good sleep, because that's the ways that you build muscle, all three of those. And I do think cardio is important. So I do want to say that. I think that cardio is an important factor in this, but the biggest driver of your success is going to be from your nutrition.
In your opinion, what is the most overlooked nutrition component in the average person's diet today?
I would say maybe fiber. I just did a podcast episode on my podcast about fiber intake, and I said that it's the most overlooked. I think right now, especially on social media, there's a lot of talk about protein and like adding cottage cheese to everything, and protein is very important. However, what a lot of times happens is when people add protein, it naturally starts to displace our plants, because fiber comes from plants. Then you wonder why you're getting constipated. It's, what happens is people think, oh, well, protein constipates me. That's probably not the case. It's probably just that you're focusing so much on adding the protein that you're not getting in plant foods that have the fiber, and that's what's causing the constipation. So you have to have this balance. Inside the formula, I teach my clients how to hit their minimum. For women, we need 25 grams of fiber at a minimum per day. And then also how to hit their protein goal within their calorie allotment. And so inside the formula, I actually have them specifically change something in MyFitnessPal, the nutrients tract, to look at fiber. Fiber is really, really important. And when you do, you'll just feel so much better. I have so many clients who do, obviously they're coming to me for weight loss, but some of them may have like some mild GI issues where they're always bloated. They can't really go to the bathroom. And after a couple of weeks, they're like, oh, I haven't had that problem in such a long time, because we're balancing your nutrition out. So yeah, that's one of the added benefits. But I think fiber would definitely be overlooked.
And it's so ironic that you say that, because that was my biggest thing when I went to the wellness center and they told me how to increase my protein. But then when I went to the energy class, then it explained, the macros about the carbohydrates, the fat, and the protein, but they also specifically hit it on fiber, because they say when you increase your protein, you should increase your fiber so you won't get constipated. So it's a great thing that you said that. I'm telling you, you need to go work for them. They need to come work for you.
Right.
You talked about clients who've been losing the same 15 pounds repeatedly. What's usually the missing piece that keeps women in this cycle?
I would definitely say just the identity piece and focusing on action. So whenever you are starting a weight loss program, it is action focused. You got to take your walks and you're restricting or whatever your diet you're doing. But then once the program ends, you stop doing all of that. And so one of the biggest mistakes that I see when clients, they reach their goal, they lost the 15 pounds, and then they just stop doing everything that they were doing, including tracking. So one of the benefits of the Fit Figure formula is that you can take that knowledge with you forever. It's not like you're counting points or something like that. You're actually understanding your food so that you can take that knowledge with you forever. But also, when you reach your goal, you want to do something what's called a reverse diet. So now that you are a smaller human being, your maintenance calories are now different. They aren't as many because you're now a smaller person. So you really have to take that calorie deficit and start increasing your calories just by like 100 calories per couple of weeks to find where your new maintenance calories are. So I think that part is really important because tracking at maintenance and knowing how many calories you need to maintain your ideal weight is really important. I would also say another thing is not doing something restrictive to get to the goal and then think that now I'm going to live a balanced lifestyle and be able to maintain it. How you get to the goal is really important. So if you're doing keto, or if you went vegan, or if you are doing intermittent fasting to get to the goal, but that's not actually how you want to live your life forever. And the mistake is thinking I can get to the goal with that method and then keep the goal without the method that got you there. And that's another trap that I see a lot.
You structure your coaching to prepare women for holidays, stress, travel, unavoidable life changes without abandoning their goals.
So inside the Fit Figure formula, I built out a whole curriculum that drip feeds. So I'm in my client's back pocket every single day. I tell them exactly what to do. So it's kind of like it's a framework, but it's really important that my clients kind of fill in and color in between the lines, if you will. So I have this framework. We talk about vacations. We talk about holidays, dating, eating out, weekend eating. I've worked with enough clients at this point that I know the pitfalls and the life events that happen that throw people off. And so I've already baked that into the curriculum. So we're talking about all of those things. I give them a vacation framework that they can execute every single time. I think it's important for them to have a reset day every week. And that is on Saturdays inside the formula. But if you reset and ask yourself 3 questions, what went well this past week? What did not go well this past week? What do I want to change for next week? If you adopt that, you'll never have 2 bad weeks in a row because you're resetting. So it's not about not falling off. It's not about never falling off. It's about how quickly can I reset? And if you just focus on the reset instead of being consistent and disciplined and trying to make it perfect, you'll actually have more success. So all of those things are already baked inside of the curriculum, inside the formula.
For the women listening who tried everything and feel defeated, what's the one mindset shift that could change their entire approach starting today?
The 1%. So I actually coined this from coaching one of my clients, and I call it the 1% shift. So you don't need a radical mindset shift. You don't need a radical new diet. You just need a 1% shift. So every morning, asking yourself, how can I be 1% better today? Taking that little bit of time, this is what I call your power hour in the formula. It's a little bit of time each morning to make those powerful connections in your brain, to think something powerful about yourself every day, to visualize and see yourself throughout your day, making great decisions, beating self-sabotage. That little bit of time each morning to get 1% better and to think a powerful thought will change your life over time, and it will be sustainable because it's not an overhaul.
Can you tell the people about the services you offer and where they can find?
So you can join the Fit Figure Formula if you go to thefitfigureformula.com. Also, if you are, I think that maybe she's not on mute. I can still hear a whole bunch of stuff. Hold on. There we go. Let me start over. So, yes, you can find me on Facebook at Stephanie Riles. You can also listen to my podcast, the Fit Figure Formula podcast. I break down macros and mindset. I have several great episodes that'll be very helpful. I'm also on Instagram at Stephanie Riles Dietitian on Instagram. You can go to fitfigureformula.com and apply to the formula as well.
Thank you for coming on. It was a pleasure to hear the things that I'm doing with my wellness that you have already co-signed on. So I feel like I'm doing 100 right now. And thank you so much for coming on. And hopefully I can have you back on again.
Yes, thank you so much for being here. I enjoyed it. Have a good one.